are kind of walking through this story here. It is kind of sort of a story. He takes us on this journey through ideas and through places, bringing us ultimately to the end of the book, which I'll give you the spoiler alert. It's a bad idea when you're reading a book to flip to the last page. I used to do that when I was younger, to flip to the last page of a book to read what it said, and then try to figure out, then you're reading through the whole book and you're like, how did it end up there? And the punchline of Ecclesiastes, and we might have that same thing in the middle of Ecclesiastes. Well, how the heck is he going to end up there? Because it doesn't seem to be going there. The punchline of Ecclesiastes is God. That in the midst of all these things, everything else is to turn to God, to trust in God, and to live for God, to love Him, to trust in Him, to live for Him. And that's kind of where Ecclesiastes ends. And throughout this whole journey, it might be kind of like, well, I don't see how we're getting there. But trust me, it lands there. It goes there. That's the conclusion is, he says even at the end of the book, in the very last chapter, the end of the matter, all has been heard. Follow God, keep His commandments. And that in this you will have some meaning, that you'll have some trust in Him. If you trust in Him and you follow His commandments, that this is what we ought to do. And this is where we find our meaning. And so it might seem like a pessimistic book. I don't think that it is an especially pessimistic book. I think it just takes us to places that we don't really want to go. It makes us look at things that we don't want to look at. It makes us consider things in a way that kind of makes us uncomfortable. We don't like to think about things that make us uncomfortable. We don't like to think about things that are awkward or hard to think about. And Ecclesiastes brings us to places where we have to really wrestle with things, because Ecclesiastes is really wrestling with the big questions that gnaw at our soul, that get to the heart of who we are. It wants us to look at the hole that is in our soul, to look at that and to say, what is this? How can it be filled? What does it mean? What's the point of everything? And these are big questions. And they're big questions that we tend to spend a lot of time distracting ourselves from, that we even have these questions. We fill our lives with distractions upon distractions. And so the preacher here, as he identifies himself, this is mostly, like I said, written by Solomon. He calls himself the preacher, which in the Hebrew is Kohelet. He identifies that he is a preacher, and he takes us on a journey through the things of this world to see where meaning can be found and where it can't be found. And we looked at last week as he took us through wisdom and learning and taking us to the heights of wisdom and learning, and he came to the conclusion that even in wisdom and learning, it's chasing after wind. It's just grabbing at nothing. Just like our ancient fathers there of Adam and Eve, going all the way back to them, where they were reaching at the tree, and they were trying to grasp at the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, and it ended up being nothing. He says that trying to grasp at human wisdom and human knowledge is exactly the same thing. It is chasing wind. It is grasping at nothingness. It is just, the refrain throughout this whole book is that it is breath, it is vanity, it is emptiness. It has no substance. It cannot be grabbed. There's nothing there to grab. And so taking up this mantle here, he goes through even more things. So, okay, human understanding and knowledge isn't the answer. And we might say, well, okay, well, where do we go with that? Well, maybe we found someplace else. Maybe it's found in the things that we have in life. Maybe it's found in the things that we do in life. And this is especially, I think, something that speaks to our society that we live in, because often we have in our world and stuff, we tell ourselves, if I only had a better house or a better job or a better car or a better wife or a better, you fill in the blank. If only I had more, or if I had better, or if I had the next thing, then I would find the answer. If I had more money or cars, time, food, if I had more of that, then I would find my satisfaction. That would answer the thing. That would fill the hole in my soul if only I had those things. And Solomon here takes us through this journey, and he's going to tell us, well, no, that's not where the answer is found. Again, spoiler alert, but that's where he's going to go with this. And so if you would join me as we take this journey here, we're going to read through chapter 2, verses 1 through 11. And it's either in your bulletin, or if you want to open your Bible to Ecclesiastes, if you're in Psalms, you're in the neighborhood. It's right in there. And so we start in verse 1. I said in my heart, come now, I will test you with pleasure. Enjoy yourself. But behold, this also was vanity. I said of laughter, it is mad, and of pleasure, what use is it? I searched with my heart how to cheer my body with wine, my heart still guiding me with wisdom, and how to lay hold on folly, till I might see what was good for the children of man to do under heaven during the few days of their life. I made great works. I built houses and planted vineyards for myself. I made myself gardens and parks and planted them with all kinds of fruit trees. I made for myself pools from which to water the forest of growing trees. I bought male and female slaves and had slaves who were born in my house. I also had great possessions of herds and flocks, more than any who had been before me in Jerusalem. I also gathered for myself silver and gold and the treasure of kings and provinces. I got singers, both men and women, and many concubines, the delight of the sons of men. So I became great and surpassed all who were before me in Jerusalem. Also my wisdom remained with me. And whatever my eye desired, I did not keep from them. I kept my heart from no pleasure. For my heart found pleasure in all my toil. And this was my reward for all my toil. Then I considered all that my hands had done and the toil that I expended in doing it. And behold, all was vanity and a striving after the wind. There was nothing to be gained under the sun. And so he wraps up this section here by telling us this conclusion that there's nothing to be gained under the sun. And so the preacher, as he calls himself here, Solomon, our guide to the answers to life, the universe, and everything, the big questions in life, takes us further on this quest by saying, well, it wasn't found in wisdom and knowledge. Well, maybe it's found in fun. Maybe if I just have enough fun, maybe I can just find my meaning there. And this meaning that we seek simply cannot be found in self-gratifying pursuit of pleasure. It can really only be found in God. We do not aim for treasures of earth, but the eternal glories of heaven that last forever. That's what he wants us to look at. And so we look here as he tells us about the breath, this emptiness of it all, that this is just his breath. And this word hevel in Hebrew is the kind of unifying thought throughout this entire book here, that it's breath. It is, as I said, and I've alluded to it the last couple of times here, it is akin to walking out on a cold morning and breathing out, and you see that your breath goes out and it's gone. It is just that. It is breath. And so he's calling everything this breath. And it's not a moral condemnation on things. He's just saying there's just nothing there. It's temporary and non-substantial. It has nothing to grab onto, and it's gone. And so he says this is also this as well. And he introduces this with telling about his purpose here in seeking. Is there purpose? Is there meaning in pleasure? He says here in the first few verses, he introduces this, and he gives us this kind of introduction as he did last time when he said, I'm going to search out everything. And he said, I'm going to apply my heart to search out wisdom and all that is done under heaven. And I'm going to do this. Now he's telling us, he's speaking to himself. Maybe you talk to yourself. Well, you have good company because the preacher talks to himself. Not just this preacher, but this preacher talks to himself. And he says, I said in my heart, I said, self, come now, I will test you. And in similar language, like I said, he said, I said in my heart, come now, I will test you. Here, he's saying last time, he says, I applied my heart to seek out and to search. And he knew about testing. We're told, we looked at last time, in 1 Kings 10, the queen of Sheba came from the south, from far, far away to come. And we're told that when she came, she tested him to seek out the depths of his knowledge. And she went away in awe at the fact that his wisdom was so far more than even the rumors which had driven her from her land far, far away to come all the way to seek him, that his wisdom was even more than what she could possibly have imagined, that this was even greater than the thing that she had heard of. And she tests him to seek out the depths of his wisdom. And that same language here Solomon uses by saying, I'm going to test out pleasure. I will test pleasure. I will seek this out. I'm going to search it out. I'm going to dig it out like treasure. I'm going to dig in a hole and see if there's treasure down there. I'm going to see what's down that hole of treasure, seeking pleasure. Having moved on, like I said, from testing knowledge and stuff, he brings this out about to say, what about, wisdom, knowledge, at least human wisdom, human knowledge, that was kind of, we crossed that out. That didn't bear the meaning of life, was not found there. Well, what about, okay, we'll look over here. What about wealth and pleasure and those things? What about that stuff? Will that be the answer? And he's literally setting out to discover this true meaning of things. Is there substance in that? Is there substance in that? And so we see right off the bat here that this preliminary evaluation he gives us right off the bat, well, it's not there. He says, behold, this is also vanity. He kind of gives us if you've ever read a scholarly article, they have what's called an abstract, where you read the thing, and it tells you what the findings of the paper is going to be. You have a paragraph that says, this is what this paper is about, and this is what we found. And then you have to read through the whole paper in order to see how they got there, what the true findings were. But there's always this abstract. He does the same thing here by giving this abstract, by saying, this was my test to seek and to find out whether the pleasures of this world could be found to have the meaning of life. And the solution was, no, it wasn't there. But he goes on to tell us the true details of that test as well. But he wants to tell us this is a dead-end road. This is a road that doesn't go anywhere. And so he tells us that laughter is meaningless. It's mad. He says, of laughter, it's madness. It's just, what point is all that? And he'll go on later in the book to say there's nothing wrong. Again, this isn't about whether or not laughter is bad. This is that laughter, in and of itself, laughter has no meaning. It is just that. It's laughter. You laugh and it's gone. Right? You laugh, and what does it do? It doesn't do anything. There's no substance there. And he says, of pleasure, what good is it? Well, we might want to answer that, well, quite a bit of good. I mean, pleasure is pleasing, right? Pleasure feels good. It feels good to do good things. It feels good to sit down at a good meal. It feels good to indulge in things. And that's why he's going to take us for a ride. I would say that it would be a bit of a joyride, but this is Ecclesiastes, so probably not so much of a joyride. But he's going to take us for a ride. And on this ride, we're going to move fast, because I think as he goes through this, he's kind of piling up in these statements here. He's going to tell us 18 times, I did this, and I did this, and I did this, and I did this, and I did this. There's 18 I statements just piled on a row here. And he wants us to get to the point where we get to the end of this list of things that he said he did, and we almost want to take a breath ourselves, because he said, well, I did this, and I did this, and I did this, and you're like, okay, and so we're going to go through this, look at what he looked at here. And we're told here in the pursuit of pleasure that he starts off with alcohol, and we could even broaden that out to substances in general, but he looks for pleasure in alcohol. And so he says, well, I searched with my heart to cheer my body with wine. And so he says, well, you might say, well, that's kind of cheating, right? I mean, to start right off with chemical joy, right, as it were, and to start right out with a chemical that could make you feel pleasing, even if it's not necessarily real, that might seem like cheating, but he's going to pursue everything here. He's going to say, I sought out everything. And I say it's cheating because, alcohol and other drugs and stuff, they're an easy way to distract, and they're an easy way to kind of feel maybe some semblance of joy and maybe some semblance of pleasure and happiness, but it is fleeting and it is hollow. It is artificial. It is literally chemically created. It is not true happiness or anything. It is just that. It is a distraction. It is a distraction to seek from what could be real. It distracts us from the hole that is in our soul rather than seeking to fill it. It simply numbs it and distracts you from it. And Solomon knew this better than anybody else. He writes in Proverbs, wine is a mocker, and strong drink a brawler, and whoever is led astray by it is not wise. He says, listen, this is not an avenue to go by. Wine is something that mocks, and it's not good. And he takes this opportunity to remind us that this experiment, he's not just going on some crazy benders as well here. He says, I kept my mind about me. So even in the course of indulging in these things, it wasn't just reckless abandon for the sake of pleasure. I didn't just go fully debauched and just do whatever the heck I wanted to do. I did this with a systematic approach to things. He says here, yes, I searched out wine and I did this thing, but he says, my heart's still guiding me with wisdom, that the purpose of this mission wasn't lost in all of this. And we might kind of say, well, I don't know how that would work, because the things that he's going to say that he did, it seems almost mind-boggling that in indulging all these things, he still kept his mind about him. But he says, I kept my mind about me. This is a man on a mission. This is a man on a mission. He is, in a sense, the anti-prodigal, where the prodigal son sought to go out there saying, my meaning of life is found out there, and I'm going to go find my meaning, and I'm going to go indulge in all these things because that's my life, that's my right, and I'm going to sell my right to go do all that. Solomon here says, there's no meaning out there, and I'm going to go out there and prove it to you. That's what he's kind of doing here. And so we see that he asks of this, again, what is this good? Is any of this worth doing? Is there anything here? And we might say, well, I don't indulge in drugs and alcohol, and I've never done drugs, I've never done anything like that, I never done any crazy stuff like that. And we might say, well, so that doesn't really speak to me. But he goes on from there and just say, well, it's not just about pursuing substances for joy. He turns from that and says, I also made great works in verses 4 through 6. I made great works. I built houses and planted vineyards. I made myself gardens and parks and planted them with all kinds of trees. I made myself pools to water the trees. I did all these works as well. And for many of us, we might say like that, oh, well, I didn't indulge in drinks and stuff. And he seems to kind of counter that right with, well, yeah, but there's other pleasures in life. It's not just pleasures are only found in alcohol or drugs or things over here. There's also pleasure to be found in doing stuff. We fill our lives with stuff and with doing. And he says, what is this? Is this the answer? Is it to be found here? If I do these things, if I fill my life with the doing, and he tells us of these accomplishments by, I did this, and I did this, and I did this, and I did this, and I built this, and I did that. And this probably rings true for a lot of us, because we do things, we build things, we plant things, we plan things. We look back and we say, oh, look at all the stuff that I did. And it's not that these things are bad, because he's going to go on later in Ecclesiastes and says, it is good to do good work, and it is good to take your work and enjoy the fruit of that labor. Like, you worked hard, and it's good. That is actually a gift from God, he's going to say later in Ecclesiastes. That is a gift from God to, at the end of a hard day's work, to sit up and kick your feet up and just enjoy it. So he's not saying that it's not okay to enjoy this, but again, this is the search for meaning. Can meaning in life be found in these things? We so often put the meaning of our life in those things. We ask each other, when you meet someone, you say, hopefully your name, but if it's not, the second or third thing out of your mouth is probably, what do you do? We always ask, what do you do? We identify with what we do. We say, I am a pastor, or I am a mechanic, or I am a teacher, or I am, fill in the blank, I am a farmer, I am a whatever the thing that you are this thing. And we put all of our meaning into that. We pour all of our meaning into this thing that we do. But yet we know that we retire, we are injured, our bodies break down, our mind break down, we break down, and eventually we cannot do the things that we formerly did. And I have seen it happen before, where then we are left with, what was it all? I poured all my meaning into this thing, and now what? And so Solomon says, yes, I did all these things. I did this, and I did this, and I did this, and I did this. And again, the conclusion to all of this is that it was all just meaningless. It was all just empty. It was all just breath. And so he goes on to even further to tell us what more he did in 7 through 8. And he tells us, I bought male and female slaves and slaves who were born in my house. And I had possessions and herds and flocks. I had all this stuff. Because maybe it's in the getting of stuff. Maybe it's the getting of stuff that I could do. Maybe if I just had enough. Right? Not just that I indulged in substances. Well, that wasn't it. And I did all these projects. Well, that wasn't it. Maybe if I just got enough stuff. Maybe if I just had all the stuff that could be had in the getting of stuff, I would find my meaning. I could fill the hole in my soul with the stuff. Just get huge hordes of stuff. I remember, getting stuff is probably our national pastime. We talk about baseball and football and stuff, but getting stuff is probably the true American pastime. I know we build temples to it. We build whole temples of acquisition. And they're usually one in towns. It's called Walmart. And we have these temples of acquisition. I remember the first time I saw a super Walmart, a huge Walmart. It felt, at least at the time, that it was just this huge place. I grew up in a town that had a grocery store very similar to Save More. In fact, when I've gone to the Save More here and the type of shopping carts that they have in there, I remember Elizabeth was like, what is this type of shopping cart? I was like, oh, you pull up here, you pull the top down stuff. I grew up with a grocery store just like this. And I remember the first time I saw a Super Walmart, and I was an adult at the time. Okay, they were late to come back east. They didn't, up in the Northeast, they were kind of late there. And I saw this, and I was in awe of this. Like, this place is open 24 hours a day, and you can get everything in here. There's not just stuff, but then there's food, and it's huge. Look, it's got 2 whole entrances. It's this whole big, massive place. And it was truly amazing. I had never seen such a thing before in my life. I was like, this is mind-boggling. But these are temples of acquisition. These monuments of stuff and the getting of stuff. I love in the VeggieTales, Madame Blueberry, which we watched with the kids there, the mini camp there. They call it Stuff Mart, and it's Stuff Mart, and they have the little song. They're like, lots of stuff, lots of mart, but it's Stuff Mart. We have the stuff, and in getting stuff, you can be filled. Well, Solomon indulged in that for sure. He tells us he has slaves, and this isn't, he's not going to go into whether slaves are right or wrong and stuff. We know slavery is bad, but he's just saying, listen, I got the stuff. I even got people. I had so much stuff, I had people. And not only that I had people, but I had people who were bearing children, and they were bringing people. He's got a whole nation. This is nation language. I had people who were then having offspring, and they were my people. I had a nation even under me. Not just the people that I ruled in this kingdom, but even in my own castle, I have a nation of slaves that I have right here. And not only that, but he's going to say that I have flocks and herds and more possessions than anybody who'd ever lived. I had it all. And not only that, I had silver and gold, the treasures of kings and provinces. And we talked about that a bit, looking at that last week, where he got his yearly tribute from the kingdoms that he had power over was 666 talents. That's 50,000 pounds of gold, 25 tons of gold. Now, I did some math when I was looking at this. I know math, but that averages out to 140 pounds of gold each and every day. That's a whole pallet of bricks of gold every single day he's getting. And so that is about $28,000 worth of gold every single day. $28,000 solid gold bullion every single day, 140 pounds of it. Every single day for the rest of his life, throughout his entire reign, he's getting this much gold. We're told in 1 Kings 10:21 that all his drinking vessels were from gold, and all the vessels of the house of the forest of Lebanon, which was part of his castle, were of gold. None were of silver. And we're told that throughout the entire kingdom of Israel, silver was not considered as anything. Silver was nothing. Silver was nothing. Silver was like, we find a penny on the ground today, and we say, is it worth it to bend over and pick it up? Because it's just a penny. In Solomon's day, a pure silver coin was like that. Well, it's just silver. They had that much gold flowing through the kingdom. That was Solomon's life. And he had stuff. But we're told in Luke 12:16 through 21, Jesus gives a parable saying, the land of a rich man produced plentifully. And he thought to himself, what shall I do? For I have nowhere to store my crops. And he said, I will do this. I will tear down my barns and build larger ones. And there I will store all my grain and my goods. And I will say to my soul, similar language to what Solomon is saying here. I said to my heart, I will say to my soul, soul, you have ample goods laid up for many years. Relax, eat, drink, and be merry. But God said to him, fool, this night your soul is required of you. And the things you have prepared, whose will they be? So is the one who lays up treasure for himself and is not rich toward God. Now, Jesus isn't condemning this guy for having stuff. The point is that in the stuff was nothing. He says, well, you spent all this time building up all this stuff, and you kicked up and you put your feet up, but you're going to die now, and what is all this stuff going to be? It's nothing. You can't take it with you. As the old saying goes, there's no U-Haul behind a hearse. You can't take it with you. And so he tells us so well about amusement. He says, I got singers and stuff, and they didn't have iPods. They weren't plugging in an iPod. And we have so much music. I can go in my office. I have an Alexa in there. I can say, Alexa, play this, and she'll play whatever music I want. Well, it wasn't like that in his day. But he got men and women singers, and he has them sing, and they can follow him around and do whatever he wants. And we're told as well, not just that, but he amuses himself with physical desires as well. He said, I had concubines, many concubines, and the delights of the sons of man. We're told in 1 Kings 11:3 that he has 700 wives and 300 concubines. He's got 1,000 women to satisfy any need he could possibly have. We think in our day that we're unique, that we have a unique society that is uniquely sexually driven and uniquely seeking meaning in that. Solomon said, well, I tried that too. I tried to find meaning in that. And anything you could think of, I did it. I did it, everything. And that's what he wants us to come away from. I did it all. But maybe you didn't. No, I did that too. But maybe, no, I did that too. He did it all. And we're told here, as he brings to the great summary of his examination here in verses 10 through 11, he says, and whatever my eyes desired, I did not keep from them. I kept from my heart no pleasure. There's nothing that I kept. If it was something that I thought could be pleasing, I did it. Right, he lived the Nike life. Nike's saying is, just do it. That's what his saying was. He saw it and he just do it. He did everything, and he does this all. In the summary judgment of it all, he says, even in taking the pleasure and the toils that he did, all of this stuff, and he considers it all in verse 11, and it was all vanity. It was all this breath. It was all this thing, and it was a striving after wind. It was a chasing after wind, where it was all just that. And he reflects on it all. And what was found in indulging and experiencing everything imaginable? Were the answers to the burning questions that gnaw on the souls of people found? Were the answers to the things that when we're alone in the dark hours of the night and we're considering our own life and the meaning of our life, were the answers to the existential dread that sometimes creeps into our life when we think about the fact that we were born and we're going to die, and what does it all mean? Were the answers to those things found in the indulging in this stuff? Well, he says, no, that's it. That's it. He went down to the end of the road, and he comes back and says, that road goes nowhere. And we might say, well, maybe you didn't go far enough, Solomon. No. I went further than you could ever go. I had more wisdom and more resources and more riches to go down this road farther than you could ever go in your life. I went down the road of pleasure and indulgence and those things, and that road goes nowhere. And he stands there at that road to say, this goes nowhere. Don't go here. Because we always, if only I could get more. No, he says, no, I went down that road. Listen to me. Kind of like when your kids want to go do something, you say, nope, that's not a good idea. Stop running around. Someone's going to get hurt. And then they just keep on running around and smack. Well, and I said, someone's going to get hurt. Solomon stands here at this road to say, if you seek meaning in the pleasures of this world, if you seek meaning to life, in pleasures of this world, whether it be food or alcohol or even just projects and busyness and work or stuff, any of these things that might bring you pleasure in this life, if you seek to find the meaning of life in those things, you are going down a road that goes nowhere. And he says that the whole point of all these verses is to say, I went down that road and I did it further and I did it more than you could do. I don't know about you, but I do not get $28,000 worth of gold dropped on my doorstep every single day. I don't know about you, but I do not reign over a kingdom that spans the center of the known world. I do not have the resources that Solomon did. But Solomon had the resources that Solomon did. And Solomon says, I spent this resources and this life exploring all these things so that I could go down that road and come back to you and say, that road goes nowhere. That stimulants, depressants, projects, people, money, fame, wealth, things, sex, that he tried it all to its absolute fullest, And he comes back to says, you will never have the fun that I had. You simply do not have the resources. I did it so that you don't waste your time. There's nothing to be gained in that. Pleasure is a liar, and it is the trick of the world and the temptation of our very first parents, going all the way back to the garden, because it was that same thing in the garden where that the serpent said to our parents, said, if you just eat this fruit, you'll find that meaning here. You'll find something here. There's something here. And just like they tried to grasp at something that ended up being a wind, this too is a grabbing at the wind. And we see that even what Eve saw in the tree was exactly this. Not just that it was good for knowledge, but she says in Genesis 3:6, it was good for food, and it was a delight to the eyes. It was good to look at. It was a pleasure. And she's trying to grab at it. And Ecclesiastes is about life in this world. It's life under the sun. And he seeks to seek and find out if there's anything under the sun in this world that we live in that can fill the hole in our soul. And he simply says, they're not here. They're not in human wisdom. They're not to be found in pleasures of this world. It's just not there. Pleasure is a liar and a trickster and a cheat. It offers you the promise that if you have more, then you can be happy. We see it in commercials. We're bombarded with thousands of ads every single day. Everywhere you go online, and every single web page has stuff on the sides. You watch TV, there's commercials. You listen to the radio, there's commercials. Everything that we look at saying that if you had this thing, then it would make your life better. If you had this thing, then that would be it. If you had this thing, then that would be it. And Solomon says, it's all a lie. It's a trick. It's a cheat. There's nothing to be found in that. And that message is not unique to Ecclesiastes. I said, Jesus talks about the parable of the guy who had all the stuff and saying, what was all that stuff mean anything here? And 1 John 2:16 through 17, we looked at that, it seems like a long time ago when we were going through 1 John. He says, for all that is in the world, the desires of the flesh, the desires of the eyes, and the pride of life, is not from the Father, but is from the world. And the world is passing away along with its desires, and whoever does the will of God abides forever. So you have this contrast that runs throughout the entire Bible, that the things under the sun, the things of this world, simply do not have what it takes to satisfy the soul. And it might seem a bit of a downer to say, oh, well, that's an awful lot of stuff there. You just told me that everything that I've been building my life on is nothing. But I don't think Solomon wants us to be depressed in this. He wants us to take joy in this by saying, hey, it's not down there, but it's somewhere. C.S. Lewis said that the fact that we want more points to the fact that there's something more to have. The fact that we don't find meaning in these things points to the very fact that there is something else to be found, that there's something that we yearn for. And it's in Ecclesiastes that we read in verse 11 that he is the one, our Lord, who put eternity in our hearts so that we would seek something else, that we have this thing that's been put in us, this eternity, that there's something in us that we know this isn't it. And we know that the answer has to be found someplace else. And Solomon here says it's not down there, but it's over here. It's not found in the American dream. It's not found in those things. But that true and lasting peace can only come through God. That's the conclusion of Ecclesiastes. And it's the conclusion of the whole Bible. Jesus made the distinction between what he would give, the peace that came from him and the peace that came from the world. And when in John 14:27, he said, peace I leave with you, my peace I give to you. Not as the world gives, not that type of peace, but my peace I give you. A true peace. And he says, don't let your hearts be troubled. And the basis of that peace, the basis of that foundation comes down to this very thing here. Let not your hearts be troubled. Believe in God. Believe in me. The anchor, the pillar, the solid rock, the thing that we stand on comes from God, and it can only come from God. And for all his pursuits and accomplishments, we might ask ourselves today, where is Solomon? Solomon is dust. I mean, we don't even know where Solomon's tomb was. It's that far forgotten. We talk about him. He's in this word. Right? We have relics of his time period. They have found things that look like palaces and stuff that go back to his time period. But no one knows where his body is. No one knows where his tomb is. No one knows where his bones are. His bones are dust by this point, and he's nothing else. His legacy was tarnished. His pursuit of all these things ended up with the kingdom being split, and he turned away from God. But he stands there to tell us that the death rate is 100%. 10 out of 10 people die. Everyone dies. And that's why he can say, yeah, the pleasures and the offerings of this world are breath, and they are temporary, and they simply do not matter because they simply don't last. They don't go anywhere. Because of what's going on in this matter, because they don't matter, we have to look to God and to his Son who came down to the world of breath and futility and all this. That's where we find our meaning. I was looking through some stuff here, and maybe you've heard this song. I hadn't heard this song before, but someone mentioned it, so I looked it up. A song by Peggy Lee. This apparently recorded in 1969. Someone's nodding. Peggy Lee has a song, Is That All There Is? And in that song she says, is that all there is? Is that all there is? If that's all there is, my friends, then let's keep dancing. I'm not going to sing like she did, but then let's keep dancing. Let's break out the booze and have a ball, if that's all there is. But it's not. And that's where Ecclesiastes will say, that's not what all it is. It doesn't end there. That's why this ought not to depress us, but bring us joy, because it tells us that we are not fulfilled by the things of this life. And that's a good thing. You're not fulfilled in what you have in this life. Good, because you shouldn't be. You still feel like there's something lacking in your life. Good, because it is. Because you're not supposed to be fulfilled by the things of this life. They are exactly meaningless in the face of what God offers, eternal life and salvation in his Son. And so if you don't know that, then you have to turn to Christ. You have to turn to him as your Savior. And if you do know that Son today, and as you go out into the world, remember where joy and happiness comes from and where it doesn't come from. Because you're going to go out there and you're going to see the lies of the world that says if you have this, you could be happy. If you have this, then you'll be happy. If you indulge in this, then you'll be happy. You're going to meet people in their lives who have stuff, and they live their lives for things, even projects or stuff or pleasures, and they're going to say, in these things is my meaning, and they're going to have something lacking in their lives, and you can look at that and say, I know that that's a dead end. Let me tell you about the truth. Because they don't come from these things. We can be wary of the lies and the pleasures and the empty promises, and we can remind ourselves to look to God, and we can share to others, look to God. Because the things in this life will not give what they promise. Because it's simply not there, because they are breath. They have no substance. It's just breath. It's emptiness. It's hollowness. We seek him and his word and his truth, and that's where we find the answers. You want to know where to find the answers? They're not found out there. They're found in here. This is where the answers are found. This is where truth is found. This has substance. If this hits you, you feel it. This is where the answers are found. This has the substance. Nothing else has substance, not even this fancy iPad. I like this iPad, it's cool, but what is this? Nothing. In 2 years, this will be obsolete. Be a paperweight. They plan it that way, okay? It'll be nothing. In 1,000 years, this pulpit will be dust. This will last. And its truth will last. And anybody's life who is built on this will last. And so we take this truth with us, and we cherish this, and we live in this. That's the calling that he calls us to. That's what the preacher stands at the end of that road and say, that's a dead end, but let me tell you about something else.